Good morning, everyone. Good day. Welcome to the APM SIG webinar today. So that's what you're looking for. You're at the right place. We have a special guest today. The goal for our SIG webinars, this one is the APM, but we have a number of them throughout the year from our various special interest groups. So if there's interest in security, big data, APM, those kind of areas, please look at the Vivit website to find out when we're scheduling events. Today's presentation is called Consolidating and Upgrading Multiple APM Instances at a Large Retailer. And so we're kind of excited about this presentation since the goal of our SIG is to bring you real-world customer implementations, updates that we can share, that you can learn from. So next slide. So the event today is brought to you by the SIG, by Vivit, and it's run, the APM Special Interest Group is run by Ron Franklin, who's a principal and architect. I think you're at the Green Light Group as well, which is a great partner of ours and great supporter of the Vivit community, and myself, Rocky Pisto. I've been a SIG leader and a LUG leader for many years. Next slide. There we go. Today's speaker is Sarah Ware. She's a senior engineer in system monitoring at Macy's. So we're great to have her with us today and kind of share what she's done with APM. And along with her is Jay Batson, who's the solution architect that she's worked with as well at Greenlight Group to make sure that the APM implementation there is working and running and guiding them through that process as well. Next slide. So just a couple housekeeping things. This is a live session that's being recorded so that those folks that have registered for this event and couldn't make it today, it will be on the Vivit website. They'll get an email at in a few days with the archived recording, along with any questions and answers that we couldn't get to during this session. So they can look for, or you can look forward to seeing that and sharing it with other members of your team. There is a session Q&A. So there's a questions panel here. The next slide. Yeah, that's great. That kind of guides you to where you can ask questions. Believe me, these kind of events are for you to learn as much as you can about what other customers are doing with the tool. So feel free to ask questions, because it's not only a question that you may have, but it may be something someone else would have liked to have asked as well. And I think we all learn from this. No question is wrong or naive or anything. Just feel free to chime in, and it just makes it more interactive for us, especially for the presenter to kind of share her thoughts of any discussion that might take off from the question. So again, feel free to ask questions and we'll go from there. Next slide. So I think with that, Sarah, I'm handing it off to you.
Great, thank you, Rocky, and thank you, Terry, the other folks at Vivit, and to all the attendees this morning. Good morning. I appreciate everyone taking time out of their busy day to attend the webinar, and hope everyone gets something out of it. I'll start with a little bit about myself. My name is Sarah Ware. I've worked in IT for about 20 years, starting out with the phone company back when it was known as Pacific Bell. And by the time, as a 411 operator, so some of you might recognize the voice if you ever got to, hi, this is Sydney. What city, please? After doing my 411, that was me. That was we all had to have code names, or we all had to have pseudonyms or whatever, and that was mine. And that was back before they had a recording doing it for everyone. By the time I left the phone company, I was a senior Unix admin, and went to Delta Dental for a while, and that's where I was introduced to monitoring and the world of monitoring, and have been there ever since. Just fell in love with the challenge and with the tools, and had really good mentors, and really enjoy working in this field and doing what I do. Let me go to the next slide. Here we go. In my downtime, I'm also a licensed falconer and wildlife rehab volunteer. I participate in what's known as a free flight program, where they take birds of prey that have been injured, and after they're done healing, they place them with me to fly them and hunt them before being released back to the wild, to make sure that they're able to provide for themselves. And as part of that, I train them to basically do free flight, which is where we cut them loose and the bird will hopefully come back. And if it doesn't, then that's just another way of knowing that it was ready to go back to the wild. Okay, now today's presentation is regarding the deployment I did at Macy's. At Macy's, we had 2 BSM APM environments, and as part of consolidation of teams and some downsizing efforts with the software, we wanted to combine both of them into one deployment. And the main reason behind this was, one, both of them were underutilized, and with so many servers and tools to support, it just made sense to consolidate and make the environment smaller where it made sense to do so. And this right here is a traditional BSM APM deployment, as you can see, with the different tools and integrations that are part of it. The deployment plan that we looked at, and I left the 2016 on here because I thought it interesting. I was thinking, wow, it was 2016 that we first started talking about this, and we just recently managed to get the plan done, deployed and done. So that's how long the plan has been in the planning phases. And again, I'm just going to go through the bullet points here. Consolidate 2 instances. We wanted to move the SiteScope servers off of the old BSM and integrate to the new. We also wanted to upgrade the instances of BPM, RUM. RUM wasn't in use in this environment, so that's not applicable. But SiteScope, UCMDB probes, and operations agents to supported versions. For BPM, that involved upgrading the agents to 926. We had various versions of SiteScope from 11.2.4 all the way to 11.4.1. Operations agents, of course, the supported version being 11.14, and UCMDB is not necessarily applicable, but we did need to address the data probe that's connected to BSM, and that does runs jobs between it and the UCMDB. So we wanted to move all of those and migrate everything, including policies, over to the consolidated BSM, and then of course configure events and things to topology to show up there. The planning involved the user groups, notification templates, and auto-signed alerts and events, AD integration, the TBEC and correlation, if there was any. There was a little bit, not a whole lot for this these 2 deployments, and also to port over any business service maps as applicable, and then to document some best practices and support processes once we're finished with this deployment. So the environments that we were working with, we were going from 2 DPS and 2 gateways on Windows 2008 servers. With actually, it was BSM 926 on the From version as well. It was a SQL database and physical boxes, and we were combining those into 1 DPS, 1 gateway, running on Windows 2012 servers, version BSM 926 IP2, with the Oracle 12G database and on VMs. And the way that we were able to do this, you're probably going, how the heck did that work? Well, it wouldn't have. At least it wouldn't have very well if we needed to keep the data. Fortunately, we didn't need to keep the data, so we were able to move the integrations and all the connections and the data points over without too much issue, as far as we didn't need to try and make the SQL database data fit over to the Oracle side. We were able to make the deployment work without having to do that. This is just another architecture diagram. And again, all of this information, I didn't mention this in the beginning, is available out on Micro Focus's website. There will be links to all the documentation that's referenced in this webinar provided. So if I'm leaving anything out or cutting over some stuff, it's with the assumption, and I hate to assume, but with the assumption that everyone's familiar with the deployment and they can look at the documentation for that. And this is going to cover hopefully some of the stuff that's not covered in the documents for you. Before you begin, this is stuff that sometimes is forgotten, and so it helps to make a checklist. At least I've found that it helps me to remember these things. Backups, make sure you have a good backup of everything, very important. Even if you're not going to use your data, you might need it, so make sure, talk to your DBA and have them do a backup. An inventory, you might think that you know everything that's connected to your instance, but I can guarantee you that there's always going to be something that is forgotten or missed. And there were a couple of things that I had overlooked when I was doing this consolidation that I had to go back and fix because I didn't do a good inventory. Make sure you know all the servers that are connected to your instance. Any reports, you want to make sure that those get copied over. And any software that you need, you want to make sure that you have that all ready to go. Server requirements, space memory, any regedit entries, the parameter files, etc. You want to make sure to copy those over, make sure and jot down what those settings are. The space memory is a big one. When I did this deployment, I didn't realize the amount of data that we would be consuming once we cut everything over from the other instance. And I quickly ran out of database space once everything was cut over. And luckily, I'm pretty good friends with the DBA, so he wasn't too mad, but they had to add about 300 gig to accommodate, and we had to make some other adjustments. So make sure that you look at your database and the space being used and plan accordingly. Licensing, make sure that your licenses get ported over or rehosted if applicable, and that you have anything you need for any upgraded versions if you need to do a migration or a license exchange. For metrics, again, we didn't move any data. All we did was reconnect to SiteScope instances and some other integration points that just started up that metric flow, which we had some issues with that I'm going to go into in just a couple slides. Ports. You want to make sure all your ports are open and available. This is just a short list of some of the mandatory ports and what they're used for that you need to make sure you have available. There's a document that's attached that has the list for both the DPS and the gateways and all of the ports that they need to have access to, which I found really useful. You could just kind of send that over to your sysadmin or your network admin and say, hey, this is what I need, and it's all right there for them. So the integrations that we were dealing with, we had SiteScope, as mentioned before. We had some that were using SAM to report back metrics and run reports. We had four BPM agents that needed to be ported over, and a data probe, ticketing and integration with ServiceNow, and a VSM connector, as well as operations agents for all of those, and some independent ones. The integration points also included, this is just a recap actually of the previous slide, with URLs pointing to existing prod VSM servers were other things that we needed to keep in mind to cut over, any jobs or external dashboards that needed to be ported over or pointed to the new VSM instance, and some other things that we had that used the old URL that we needed to populate or communicate to the users that they needed to change to point to the new one. So now we're going to get to the meat and potatoes. Hopefully I didn't go through that too quickly and it all made sense. This is really the fun part though. So during the deployment, there was a lot going on. There was, several issues that came up, but I wanted to focus on the main ones that took up most of my time and the tools that I found out about that I've used in the past, but that really helped me get past them for this particular deployment. The first one is debug. Everyone might know where that's at and how to turn that on. I was not too familiar with it, and now I'm like the debug expert. So if you ever want to know where to turn it on and off, shoot me an email. I can help you out, and hopefully this will as well. The SiteScope Java console. This is another way to access your SiteScope data and do some troubleshooting and fixes. Persistency viewer, again, another tool to go in and fix issues with your BAC, your VSM, BAC IDs, and I'll get into that shortly. VSM browser, that's going to be a tool that helps you by giving you a way to connect to your profile database and your management database. And then I wanted to go over the connector, the BSM connector backend, which I did not know about before this deployment. And it's a really cool tool to use as well. So for those not familiar with debug, if you want to know how to turn on debug for SiteScope, integration health monitors, this is going to be how we did that. And the reason that I found out about this was because after we did the cutover, I was having issues with my BSM integration and the metrics coming into BSM. So we wanted to see where the breakdown was happening. And as part of that troubleshooting process, I went in and turned on debug for the BAC integration configuration monitor. There's also logs under the conf core tools log4j plain Java directory on your SiteScope server that has an actual debug log. And you can open, there's one that's called log4j.properties.debug, or you can open up the log4j properties file and depend it with the information shown here. And then, of course, you would recreate the issue, and it generates a Topaz validator log under a SiteScope logs folder that you can go and look at and hopefully get some more information on the issue that you're having. And then this works as well for the WDE log on the BSM side, the GDE, any log that you have in there, you can go in and turn debug on, and it's usually found under the conf core tools under this directory where those files are at to turn that on with. Okay. And that looks something like this in the config file. So you've got the log level, and then you would change that to debug, or you could change it down here for any one of these individually. Please remember to turn it off when you're done, because you will chew up a lot of space if you leave debug on. Moving on to, hopefully that was a good overview of debug and how to turn it on and where those files are located. Again, if you ever have any issues finding it, let me know, and I'll try and point you in the right direction there. And there is some documentation, but a lot of it I had to kind of find out working through these issues on my own, and with some help from Micro Focus engineers. The next one is going to be the persistency viewer and how to solve the BAC IDs or BAC IDs with -1s. And I think everybody may have seen these if they work with SiteScope for any length of time. So I have to move this out. You would see a number here with the next to the -1s, just saying that you have these IDs that have issues. And the way to resolve these is to, oops, there we go. Sorry, I have a little box that's in my way here. So the way to get to this console is you open a JMX console provided in SiteScope called JConsole.exe, and you enter a port, and it opens up, and you select the M tabs. Well, you know what? Let's just go to the demo. This basically gives you a way to fix objects with duplicate BAC IDs, and it also fixes -1 BAC configuration issues. And this is how that works. So you're going to go into the Java directory, into the JConsole. And again, this is for integration issues with data between BSM and SiteScope, when you're not seeing the metrics that you expect or the information that you expect. Again, a lot of times it can be caused by these BAC IDs. And it also keeps you from creating new monitors and things in your SiteScope interface. So you want to go to the MBeans tab once you get this open, COM Mercury SiteScope, Integration, BAC Settings, and Tools. And from here, it will give you a menu to check, fix -1s, fix duplicate IDs, and to perform a soft sync. And all of these are really cool to use if you need to. I'm not sure how. I've used this before on several occasions, and it works really well as far as fixing the issue for the IDs. And you want to perform a soft sync afterwards in your SiteScope integration preferences, and make sure that you're seeing the data once this is done. And then if you're still having issues at that point, you probably have to go back and open a case with Micro Focus. But that usually fixes the problem. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Hey, sir. This is Jay. So yeah, just to kind of comment on that, that is a pretty common problem that we've seen with moving site scopes between different databases and different BSM instances and going back and forth. We'll see some of those IDs get duplicated, and then on top of that, the site scope instance won't want to send any new topology over to BSM. So doing that soft sync or a hard sync, that is a pretty common thing to have to do, and it is a common problem. So when we ran up against that, we were able to get around that.
Great, thank you, Jay. And that reminds me of again, moving the site scopes between the BSMs. Another issue that you might have is the site scope not wanting to re-register with the new BSM. And even if you do get it to register, you might not get you might have issues with it after that. And the way around that is to delete the current configuration. And this is under the SAM settings. I'm sorry, I kind of jumped ahead of myself. So under SAM, when you register your site scope to your new BSM instance, you rename the site scope instance to a different name than what it was registered before, and that will usually clear up those issues. You then perform a hard sync, and that will delete any of the previous settings and force everything to be sent over again to BSM from that site scope. And that I had to perform on, I think, every site scope that I had to move over this deployment to make everything work correctly.
Yeah, that's a pretty common one too, having to delete that profile and then resync everything. So that's another good point too, because I think pretty much everybody will run into that at some point.
Right, and sometimes deleting it and re-adding it wasn't working, and that's where actually changing the name, to maybe underscore new at the end or something like that helped fix the problem, because I was like, I've deleted it and re-added it and it's still not working, and that was the recommendation that worked. So the next thing that I wanted to go over is how to clean the integration cache. And this can happen when you have issues with persistency and, again, data that's not showing up that you would expect. And clearing this cache can help resolve those issues. And the way to do that is you want to go in and you want to stop the site scope service on your local machine, back up site scope /cache, and delete its contents, not the folder. Yeah, don't delete the folder. And then you want to back up the site scope discovery HSQ LDB and delete its contents as well. Do that for discovery and scripts, and then start site scope service at that point. You then perform a hard sync and go in and check your data. And again, this should resolve those persistency type errors and topology issues. Okay, let's change. I'm too fast here. Okay. Metrics missing. Now, this was the one that took up the most time with this deployment. After we cut everything over, we had integration points, our connectors, our agents. As part of the connector, BSM connector cutover, we had a Nagios integration that was feeding metrics up into BSM, and reports were being run against that. Once we cut everything over, the data for those reports was just not coming in consistently. I found some documentation online that's listed here that gives you some ways to troubleshoot this type of an issue that you can go out and take a look at. Really good write-up on troubleshooting and how to go through the different, go through it methodically and check each area to make sure you understand where the breakdown is occurring and why the metrics are missing. The process that I followed was to go in and start with the BSM connector. And this is where I wanted to share something that I learned that I did not know. The BSM connector actually has another way to look at its policies other than the UI that everyone's probably familiar with connecting. Normally you would connect to the BSM connector through the server name and port 3000 /BSM connector. Well, it has the backend very much like site scope interface, that if you use port 3001 and this URL here, it will open up a UI similar to what you would see with SiteScope. And I'm going to show you what that looks like next. So this is the screen that it will log you into if you use that URL. Over here to the side, you've got your monitors and your policy IDs That's what each of these is. And then it will show you the properties. You can open them up just like a regular SiteScope monitor and look at the different settings, just like you would a SiteScope monitor. And let me go ahead and show you how that looks.
Just one thing to note, that this is available on the BSM connector 10.0, but with the operations connector, the new versions, they removed this. We're asking them to put it back because this is helpful.
Yeah, when I found out about this, I was like, oh. So here I am logging into the interface, and again, you can see which policies are enabled by the ones that aren't grayed out. Shows you over here the information. I can tell if there's metrics being collected by those numbers there for the ones that are enabled. And then of course you've got the monitor settings. This is the same information that if you went into the connector UI, the front end, you would see under the policies and be able to edit in the policy itself. This is just a different interface to be able to do that and interface with it. So again, you have all the same settings as you would if it was a SiteScope monitor. Whether you want to report topology, etc. And I was just more comfortable in this UI because I work a lot more in the SiteScope setting than I do with the BSM connector. And I just found this really easy to navigate through. And again, oops, sorry. And to stop it. Okay. Sorry about that. Hit the wrong button. So it's real easy for me to go in here and I can see 4,500 lines right there of metrics are coming in, which is great because before that I might not have had any. And so I know my monitor's working or my connector's working as I want it to. And then I can go over and check on the BSM side to see if the data is actually there. But looking in here, I can see that it's at least getting to the connector from Nagios, and that eliminates this as being the issue at this point. And again, this is just going through the information that's provided and how to check all of these areas. Probably. And there's all my metrics. Yay, I'm getting metrics. And then you have your connector templates. Again, I just think this is so cool that you can go in and see it this way. Other people may not be as excited as I got, but I was pretty excited. So again, this is just for that. That's just for that version of the BSM connector, but it is another way to go in and troubleshoot and be able to look at your policies and manage your policies that you have in use on your connector. Now, this is just recapping the Nagios connector issues I had. Went over the SiteScope interface. Specific versions are that it's only available for that one. They're trying to get it back, as Jay said, for the additional versions. For the Nagios side, I had to make sure that the agent was running and that there weren't any issues there. And that's about it for the Nagios integration to the connector. Recapping, you want to just make sure that your Nagios settings are correct, your configuration's all correct on the Nagios server side, make sure the agent there is running, and then go through the steps I showed you to check your metrics on the connector itself. Now,
Sarah, we have a question related to this, so it might be a good time to kind of cover it. And you may have covered it, but if I can ask, that'd be great. Did you send data to monitoring BPM data of your application under test to Nagios, or monitored your APM with Nagios?
We sent data to our APM using Nagios. So we do both. We monitor with Nagios, and we also use it to send metrics. But the monitoring piece is managed on the OMI side. So the connector was just mainly to send metrics to our APM instance. If that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Hopefully I answered that correctly, or that was the information they were looking for. So the next thing I wanted to go over that has happened to me, and again, I don't know if it's happened to anybody else, but when you're setting up your new instance, or you're migrating off of old servers to new servers, however you're doing it, and you're reconfiguring your LDAP, sometimes things go wrong with LDAP and it stops working. Well, if you don't have your security officer set up with being assigned to a local user, you've essentially locked yourself out of your BSM. And these are the steps to go through to get back in. And this has happened to me twice now, and it hadn't happened for a long time, but it happened this last deployment, and I could kick myself for not remembering to do this before I started messing with LDAP. But anyhow, this task describes how to go into the JMX console to remove the security officer status from a user. In this case, I had assigned it to myself as a LDAP user. So when I messed up the LDAP configuration, I essentially locked myself out, and you cannot remove the status once you've assigned it unless you can log in as that user. So to remove the security officer, you just go into the URL at the JMX console, enter your JMX credentials, and then you want to go to Domain Foundations, Settings Manager, and setting value per customer ID, and then modify the parameter values as listed here, and then invoke. And this information is found in the 926 platform admin guide, but I really wanted to point it out in case anyone's run into this, or in case you have this happen in the future. Because for some reason, the BSM LDAP configuration hasn't caught up to what they're doing on the operations bridge side, which I love that interface so much. Let's just say I enjoy working in that interface much, much more. It's a lot easier to navigate through, I found, than the BSM one. So for the BSM one, keep this in mind in case you're in there doing your LDAP setup, and make sure that you take note of what settings are in your old instance, or the instance you're migrating from or off of, before you turn it off and turn up your new one. Make sure and verify that access is there. And the last step of this would be the end users need to check out. And this is important because if you don't have your end users check out, you might have missed things that they use that you don't necessarily know about, and you want to make sure that you have someone do this before you turn it loose on the masses. So verifying that they can log in. Again, configurations can be missed as far as LDAP setup and AD, and having users log in and verify that they have the screens they need to be able to view and things of that nature is very important. Are all their dashboards there? Can they view and navigate through them? Is everything there topology-wise that you expect to see? Checking with the EUM and BPM monitors, you have to make sure and copy all those over from the old servers and the old instance, and verify the agents are all connected and talking, and that the monitors are all set up the same. For the SAM site scope, you want to make sure you can access the site scopes in SAM, make sure you can log into them from there, and do everything that you normally do in the old instance and in the new one. And for reports, this is real important. For reports, there's a list of reports under the Reports tab. You want to make sure and grab those reports and port them over. I did a manual copy of each one by one, since we weren't bringing the data over, and just recreated those reports on the instance that we were migrating both BSMs to. And those can be lost if you don't do that. So I highly recommend just going through each of your configuration tabs and files and making notes of what's there, because there's always stuff that is it's maybe tribal knowledge and not documented that can be missed or left out if you fail to do that. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and open it up to questions, I guess. Sorry if I went through that really quickly.
Sarah, that was great. Great job sharing what you've done with the APM. Yeah, we've got a number of questions, and they just keep flowing in. So No problem. So let's start with the first one. What is the most common challenge when migrating from BSM to OMI or to APM that you found?
Oh boy, making
Therapy
sure
session?
that yeah, Bueller. Well, the most common problem I think is just knowing the environment that you're dealing with. And, like I said, sometimes you're stepping into an inherited environment and you think you know all of the pieces that are involved, and there's always some that come up that just weren't accounted for or that were unforeseen. And that's just, again, where I recommend really becoming familiar and understanding your environment and talking to your end users and all of the, the different groups that interact with your tool, and understanding anything that integrates with it or pulls data from it so that you can accommodate all of those in the process.
Great. What's the biggest complaint or issue you've heard when moving from BSM 9.2 to APM or to the OMI?
Well, when moving to the OMI, it's the fact that, we don't have the profile database anymore. That's the biggest issue there. When going from BSM to APM or BSM to BSM, a lot of times users can't see the dashboards that they're used to seeing because the dashboards weren't ported over, and metrics missing. It usually has to do with the data missing that they're used to seeing on the old one, not being shown on the new one. And that could be anything from topology, because integration jobs were left out that need to be recreated to bring that topology in, or metrics for reports, again, that were collected through a third party or through a connector that wasn't reestablished. And that's just, again, we're doing a checkout and making sure that all those end users are happy before you actually cut over entirely is really helpful. In fact, I would recommend doing side by side, just for that reason, where you can run the new instance up with the old one still going and do verification while you still have that old data available and those old settings, configurations available to look at.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, that's something that I hear across with all of my customers is, once we break apart those two things in the later versions of APM and OMI, what's the best, my events are going to one spot and my metrics are going to another spot. What do I do with that? Basically the cutting edge technology now with Micro Focus is to collect one store once in the Vertica, where they're kind of addressing that. But there was a time there where there wasn't a really good answer. And so, as we kind of move forward with that, and in Sarah's environment as well, we're looking forward to the new technology so that all of our data is in one place. We don't have to worry about where we should put stuff and where our reporting is going to be anymore.
Right. And
Go ahead, Sarah.
I was just going to say, Jay, remind me of something that I forgot to mention, which is the reestablishing the trust certificates with the agents, and then also your SSL certificates if you have HTTPS set, secure environment set up for, let's say you're going from one secure environment to, for example, mine's not secure, so we went from an SSL setup to a non-SSL setup, which is not ideal, of course, but that was the situation in this case. You want to remember to, get anything like that transferred over and point those agents to the new certificate manager, which, is the ops agents commands that are available, out in the integration docs for that. But yeah, you have to make sure and point those agents either to, if they're going to OMI and that's not changing, that's fine. But if you're pointing those to your BSM APM, it's doing this type of a migration, you want to make sure and point those to the new certificate server. And that goes for the connector and for the side scope servers as well.
So what versions should we be at to optimize the solution right now?
And the most current?
Yeah.
It is this latest version that we were working with of OMI and APM, the 2018.02 release. With the Operations Bridge Analytics latest patch, we can put all of our data into one Vertica database. So some of you who may not be familiar with the architecture of some of these solutions, basically Micro Focus is moving to put all of their metric data into Vertica. And they're doing a good job of making sure that we don't have to have 3 different Vertica instances because of versioning. They're fixing that with these latest releases. So we're really excited about that. So yeah, so basically it's these latest versions, they're really kind of making that collect once, store once realization.
Yeah, let me go back to that slide too, Jay, that shows that topology at the very beginning. Oh, there it is. Okay.
Yeah.
So here's.
So, and we do, I mean, I understand that OMW and OMU and OML are all end of committed support, but we still have shops who are trying to move off of those. In fact, sorry, I think one of your departments still has OMU, don't they?
Yeah, we actually still have OMU. Thank you for pointing that out. And we're currently, in the process of, solutioning that, because as you said, it is end of life or end of support as of June of last year, I think.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, it seems like this slide might be dated, but unfortunately it's not. We're still seeing customers trying to get off of their OMU and OMW implementations, and they, it's as with any corporate structure, sometimes it's hard to get away from some of those things because you got to find the new best way to do those things.
And that brings up a good point. We're one of those shops where, we'd like to move everything off to Operations Bridge and not use BSM, but because of the metrics and because of the, the BPM monitoring and metric collection that's done through that, we're kind of, and we need that profile database, bottom line. We need a way to collect those metrics and make those available to our end users. And we don't really have that solution or replacement in place as of yet. So we're kind of, I don't want to say stuck, but yeah, we're kind of stuck with the environment that we have now for the metrics because we need those.
Great. So in one of your slides, you showed that you had 2 DPSs and 2 gateway server environments, and then you were able to combine that into one. Why were you able to downsize your environment?
Well, again,
were you over-provisioned?
And I don't know that we were over-provisioned. I think that we provisioned both environments for, what we knew at the time, the use at that time. And again, as we moved off into the new Operations Bridge environment and kind of started transitioning things over, both of the instances just became more and more, less and less utilized, I should say. So at the point where we decided to go ahead and combine the two, both of them were fairly underutilized for the amount of resources that we had thrown at them. Especially, talking about the physical boxes, as anyone who's dealt with these built out on physical boxes are just monsters. And we thought we could use either redeploy those more efficiently and, maybe upgrade to APM, the current version of APM on those, and then move back over, which I think is going to be our next step, and really use those resources as we can. But the main goal again was to get off the 2008 versions as well, the Windows 2008 onto 2012 boxes, and downsize to make the environment more manageable and more efficient. We just didn't need that much hardware or software resources thrown at this point in time. But where it did become problematic was the amount of data, again, that was anticipated, that was being collected by the BMC connector, ESM connector. Thank you, sorry. By the connector and the BPM agents and Sitescope servers. I just had no idea the amount would be as large as it was. And again, I quickly killed our database in, I think, a day of turning on the metrics. And I was getting a call from the DBA going, "What did you do?" And they've had to add space, I think, like 3 times. So needless to say, I think I owe them lunch and lunch a couple days to make up for it. But that was where it was problematic, and that I didn't anticipate, the amount of storage space that we were going to need at that point for the amount of traffic that was coming in. Other than that, it has worked fairly well, going from the 2 DPS to one of each, one DPS, one gateway. We don't really have any type of high availability or failover for these, because it's not, we just don't need that set up for this particular environment at this time. That, however, something we're looking at down the road if we decide to keep these around.
So did this make it more efficient, easier to maintain?
Yes, I would have to say yes, because again, we went from 3 and 3 as far as 3 servers for DPS, gateway, and 2 separate databases to 3 servers total, with all of the metrics and everything combined into a one-stop shop. And again, this was the culmination of 2 teams merging as well. So we had to take into account that there were 2 separate processes and 2 separate support groups working in these 2 separate environments. And as trying to be one team and one big family, this was a way of promoting that and kind of putting forth that image that everything's under one umbrella, if you will, or one happy family.
And you probably reduced cost in the process of all the licenses.
Absolutely. We were able to eliminate, of course, one license for BSM and rehost any of the other ones over to the one instance, and that really helped. We were able to combine points from both teams and kind of put them all into a big pot that we could all share and pull from. So that really helped to redistribute the licenses in a much more effective and helpful way.
Great. Just a couple more, and I think we'll be done.
Sure.
What is the easiest way, from your experience now, to upgrade or migrate BSM?
I prefer to do it with brand new servers side by side. So, have your new servers built or your new VMs built, install the software, and just start cutting stuff over one at a time, with the old one still up and running and churning away. That to me has been the easiest way to do it. I've tried the other methods, and they just weren't, they just didn't go as smoothly. With the side by side, you have the luxury of being able to fall back at any time and still have the existing instance up and running and available while you're setting up and deploying the new one.
Yeah, I always recommend the side-by-side to my other customers as well. Some cases they can't, do that for whatever reason. Usually it's some sort of restriction on hardware or finances on the team. But if we can do the side-by-side, there's a couple ways to go after that makes it super easy. And like Sarah said, if something blows up on you, you still got your old instance you can fall back on.
Right. Oh, that's great.
And in this case, since we went from a SQL database to Oracle, basically we didn't really have a choice. But even if we were going from Oracle to Oracle, what I would do is just have a copy of the production data copied over to the new, I would go with a new Oracle instance as well as the new servers, and then just have the 2 databases, have the events sync up after, the events topology sync up with the integration job or what have you after I get the new instance up and running. So, and again, that works as long as you use your backup of the data, relatively soon after you make it.
Yeah. The last one I've got is, based on all you've been through to do this upgrade, was there any integration that you found to be problematic?
The connector. That was the hardest one. And that was just because I didn't really know about it until after I was almost finished with the deployment, and then once I found out about the connector and what the jobs that it was running, or the the management packs it was running were doing. That helped me, of course, get in there and start to reestablish it and troubleshoot. But at that point, we were already behind in collecting this data that was needed by these end user groups for reports. And so that kind of, that was difficult going in and troubleshooting after the fact. If I had known about it and was able to establish the connection and test it and do everything I need to do prior, it would have, I think, gone a little bit more smooth.
I think the one that I get the most calls about is the SiteScope integration. You would think by now it would be simple because it's been around for so long, but depending on the version of APM or OMI you're on, and depending on the version of SiteScope you're running, there's different topology integration packages that you need to deploy because of versioning of the software that you're on. So when you do that, you just have to make sure that you read the release notes for the versions of software that you're on to make sure that you deploy the right package. It is the README that's in those packages does spell it out. But when you're downloading the software to do the upgrades, they don't make it really obvious that there's extra packages you need to do to make sure that those integrations work properly. In the past, they've just worked, but because there's so many different versions now, it's not something people really look for. So,
right. And you're talking about like the content packs, right, Jay? The content packs.
Those content that you deploy to make sure that your topology synchronizes correctly from SiteScope. So, again, not super hard to work around and make sure that you get in there, but it's just something that people in the past have not had to look for, and so then they wonder why they don't get any topology, and they just have to have that extra package.
Yeah, I actually ended up having to upgrade the SiteScope servers that I had connected through SAM to 11.3.3, and the rest I think are 11.4.1, because I was on 11.2.4 prior to this consolidation, and that was problematic for whatever reason, probably because of the different content packs that it needed. So I found it just easier to upgrade mine to 11.33 or 11.4.1, and those all seem to work well with this process. Of course, those are all really behind now, with the current version being, I think, 11.60 or something like that. So I'm still pretty behind in the versions, but 11.2.4 definitely was not cooperating as well as the more recent versions.
Yeah.
Did you guys use the staging data replicator with the upgrade?
Not with this one, no.
So no
I have in the past. I have in the past, and this was version 9.10 was my experience with it, and it was horrible. So I think that left a that was because of that bad experience. And once I found that that I could do the side by side and how much easier that was, I kind of cringe whenever I think of doing the staging. But I'm sure that it probably works a lot better in the more current versions, because that was quite a while ago.
Great. Well, Sarah, I think you guys, and Jay have answered all the questions for today. You did a great job. This is just kind of shows when someone just shares their experience, how great it is and how valuable it is to the community. And I'd like to add that for those end users that are on this call and you would like to share your experience in not only in the APM world, but in any of the SIG areas that we offer, feel free to reach out. We'd love, there's nothing better than an end user conversation of real world experience to share with other end users. So if you want the opportunity to do what Sarah did, we'd love to have from the microphone. If you have customer focused stories that you can share or share, or upgrades, or whatever experience, we'd love to have those events in our SIG area. So I really appreciate that. Just a couple of
sorry, Rocky,
sure
I'm jumping ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm jumping all over on you.
That's
sorry.
Okay. So just to let you know, we've got more events coming up. Here's a list of them. There's one on service management. There's others here that I haven't had a chance to look at myself, but this new automation sounds like there's so take advantage of listening to some of these events if you have the time, or if they're relevant to you or relevant to some of your teammates, please share it. Next slide, Sarah. Save the dates, big events coming up. As you know, Micro Focus now is gotten their act together with planning more and more face-to-face events. We've got our ADM Summit coming up in April in the Chicago area. More to come on that. I think we've already started advertising, and Micro Focus has as well. The Universe event in Europe is in Vienna this year. Always a fun place to go. Government Summit, as always, in DC. Looks like there's one in May. And then the Security Summit is probably in DC as well. That's coming up. So keep that in the back of your mind if that's an area. And here's a little more detailed information about the ADM Summit coming up in Chicago in the O'Hare area. So if it's local to you or you can make it, get all the latest and greatest from an ADM perspective, as well as customer stories, and Vivid will be there too, so stop by the booth. Next slide. And with that, I want to thank everyone for participating. Again, Sarah, you did a great job. Jay, thanks for interjecting, and you guys do a great job at Greenlight Group, great partner for us in helping support the community. And so please fill out the survey. If there's things you'd like to see or hear, feel free to put it in there. We'll do our best to try to bring that content to you. So on behalf of Ron Franklin and myself, thanks for attending the APM SIG. And with that,
Thank you so much.
we will close. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Bye.